So I was reading my book a couple of nights ago, and I got to this moment that was so intense that I couldn't put my book down. I read for like an extra hour. We've all had this experience as a reader. That moment when the story's climax is so intense, so thrilling, so suspenseful, that you're stuck. You're glued to the text. The reason that these moments are so exciting is because the writer is creating heat. Today in this lesson, you're going to learn to create heat in your writing. The standard we're working with today is Writing 7.3, writing narratives to develop real or imagined experiences or events. And we're going to do that through the substandard using precise words and phrases, relevant descriptive details, and sensory language to capture the action and convey experiences and events. We've been working with this substandard for the last couple of weeks. The skills that you already have in your toolbox to create heat in your writing are using strong, colorful action verbs, embedding adjectives and adverbs, using prepositional phrases, and adding imagery and sensory language. You're going to use all of these tools today to create heat in your writing. The format we're going to use today is flash fiction. We've been trying this on the last couple of weeks during our craft lessons. Flash fiction is starting on the edge of the fire. The reader in a flash fiction piece should feel the heat within the first couple of lines. Your flash drafts or your flash fiction pieces shouldn't be more than 4 or 5 paragraphs. They're going to be fairly short. You're not going to have a beginning, middle, and end. You're just going to have the climax. If we think about our story arc or our plot, your flash fiction is going to start right here, right on the edge of the climax. And your climax, or your flash fiction, is going to be slow and intense, just like a fire. So let's look at an example of a flash fiction piece that I wrote today, and it's actually about a fire. I felt the heat crawl across my face before I even knew that I was awake. My skin tingled with warmth and excitement. I snuggled further under my grandmother's afghan, savoring the moment. I'd always loved that moment when you're awake, yet still snug in bed. I took a deep, satisfying breath and began coughing. They were small at first, yet they quickly became violent, each cough shaking my whole body and leaving my throat dry and aching. I opened my eyes. Smoke overwhelmed my face, causing tears to stream down my cheeks. I pushed myself up so that I could see more of the bedroom. I gasped. Bright yellows and oranges danced across my bedroom floor and up the wall. Flames crawled up the floor-length curtains and hung next to the window. I watched as they were slowly overwhelmed and began to break apart, each piece turning black as it floated through the air. One landed on the edge of the afghan. I didn't move. It was then that I heard the blaring noise. I guessed that it must be coming from the fire alarm in the hallway, but I wasn't sure. It screamed at me over and over and over. Move! Get off that bed! Get the heck out of that bedroom! I heard it clearly, yet I couldn't move. I was frozen. I watched, unmoving, as the flames inched closer and closer to my bed, eating one thing after another. My pile of books under my desk, my brother's teddy bear that he had left in my room last night, my favorite purple cardigan. When it reached the foot of my bed, I began to sob. So, in this flash fiction piece, how do I create heat? I'm doing 2 things intentionally as a writer. The first thing I'm doing is I'm writing slowly. Let's look at this first paragraph. I felt the heat crawl across my face before I even knew that I was awake. My skin tingled with warmth and excitement. I snuggled further under my grandmother's afghan, savoring the moment. I'd always loved that moment when you're awake, yet still snug in bed. This paragraph takes about a second of actual time. And yet, I really stretch it out. As a writer today, I want for you to take small moments and really stretch them out. The way that you're going to do that is through really describing every single detail. If we look at this second paragraph, I took a deep, satisfying breath and began coughing. They were small at first, yet they quickly became violent, each cough shaking my whole body and leaving my throat dry and aching. You, as a reader, should be able to picture me coughing. You should be able to see my body shaking with each violent cough. Your throat should feel kind of dry and achy. The reason that you feel that way, the reason that you feel like you're experiencing this with me is because I'm really describing every detail to you as a reader. I could easily say something like, I coughed because of the smoke. But you as the reader can't picture that. You're not experiencing that. You don't feel the heat of that moment. So your job today is to write slowly and to try to describe every single detail. Now let's look at the craft moves that you already have that you're going to use to do this. Action verbs, adjectives and adverbs, prepositional phrases, and imagery or sensory language. So let's look at one of my paragraphs that really uses all four of these. Bright yellow and oranges danced across my bedroom floor and up the wall. Flames crawled up the floor-length curtains that hung next to the window. I watched as they were slowly overwhelmed and began to break apart, each piece turning black as it floated through the air. One landed on the edge of the Afghan. I didn't move. Okay, so let's look for my action verbs first, right? Remember that my action verbs are going to be those powerful, colorful verbs that really paint a picture. So I have danced, flames crawled, I watched, each piece turning, one landed. You'll notice that I actually am not using any to be verbs throughout this paragraph, but I'm using some really strong action verbs. Probably crawled and danced are the strongest. So what about adjectives and adverbs? Remember adjectives and adverbs? Adjectives I'm going to use are words that describe a noun. Adverbs describe a verb. So if we look at these, bright is describing the yellows and the oranges. Bedroom is describing the floor. I have the floor length is describing what type of curtains. Slowly is describing how the flames moved up the curtains. Black, right, describes the little pieces. So I'm using lots of different adjectives and adverbs. I'm also using prepositional phrases, and remember that prepositional phrases are acting a lot like an adjective, but they're a phrase that is describing where something is in the actual physical location. So we have up the wall, next to the window, through the air, on the edge of the Afghan. So I'm using prepositional phrases like adjectives to really create that picture for the reader. I'm also using a ton of sensory language. Probably this whole paragraph, I would say, is sensory language. Lots of pictures. So the yellows and the oranges. I have these flames crawling. You should be able to really picture the flames overwhelming the curtains and then breaking apart, the pieces floating through the air. I'm using a lot of visual imagery here. I'm not using as much sensory language like sounds or smells or feelings, but I do that throughout the rest of my flash fiction piece. But here you're getting a lot of visual imagery. So I would love to see in your flash fiction pieces today that you are using all four of these tools as you are creating heat. Remember that you're going to create heat by writing slowly and trying to describe every single detail. So we're going to do something a little bit different today. Rather than sending you off to Schoology to go find your flash drafts, I'm going to have you write them with me right now. So your first flash draft, and every one of you should be doing this, even if you're writing a longer piece for the advanced assignment, I want for you to stop and to work on these 2 flash drafts today so that you really get to practice this. Your first flash draft, I want you to title, Do Something Daring. Your character is about to do something totally daring or risky. It might even be something that puts their life in danger. Remember that you're not starting at the beginning of the story. Don't tell me how the reader, or tell me how the character decided to make this choice. Just start right in the moment where the character is taking the risk. So I'm going to put 5 minutes on the clock. I want you to I want you to decide right now what it is, what is that moment that you're going to write about. You can pause the video if you need some extra time to make that decision. Once you've decided, push play. You have 5 minutes to write this splash draft. Try to write slowly and describe every single detail. Okay, so hopefully you wrote a flash draft about a daring moment that your character took. Later on, you'll have an opportunity, if you want, to go back and to revise one of these pieces to make it longer. But I want you to stop writing now. Let's try a second flash draft. We'll again put 5 minutes on the clock, but here's your flash draft. Do something boring. Think of a totally normal, uneventful activity like brushing your teeth or taking a test. Your character is doing this activity. Your challenge is to make this boring activity an on the edge of your chair, suspenseful, thrilling, or surprising moment. So take something boring like brushing your teeth and make it super suspenseful and thrilling. Create the heat by writing slowly and trying to describe every single detail. Okay, decide what you're going to write about now. 5 minutes on the clock. Go. I know you love my lion sound, don't you? Okay, put your pencils down. If you want to, at this point, go back and revise either of these flash drafts, your flash draft, do something daring, or your flash draft, do something boring, to make them a little longer pieces, you're welcome to. However, there's also a quiz waiting for you in Schoology that you can do, or if you are writing a longer piece, you can use the lesson that you learned today to write your climax of your longer short story. Okay, enjoy.